We are now.
All right. Well, good morning. Welcome to Maine. Be out on the coast of the ocean here. So today we're going to talk about color. Perfect day for color, isn't it? Mm-hmm.
50 Shades of Gray.
Yeah. 50 Shades? No, that's something else.
Yes, it is.
So what I think is I've been learning from teachers for 30 years, heard all different kinds of lessons on color. So what I want to do is really simplify it. So I have 4 points. You probably can't read them here, but this is what we're going to follow today. See it, mix it, check it, and paint it. And our emphasis is going to be on the checking part of it. So I think you'll find that interesting, how I like to do color. I'm going to look at some notes on my phone because I'm used to seeing a PowerPoint presentation at work. I work in advertising. I'm a creative director of an advertising agency. So we do a lot of visual presentations. You know, color is one of the hardest things to figure out when you paint because of our perception of it. What color is a tree? Green. Is it really green? You know, it's pretty gray today, so everything is so relative. When we see a barn, we grab our red paint, but it's really important to really see what's really out there. And so there's all kinds of issues in colors that we deal with. I want to show you a few books as we start that I've been really helped by.
How did you get everything up here?
Speak for yourself.
Oh, wow.
These are my 4 favorites. The first one I recommend is James Gurney, Color and Light. If you don't own it, this is the best book on what's happening with color and light because they work together. He's a former illustrator, done a lot of animation work, but he talks about all kinds of different subjects. Some of it gets really detailed, but it's all very conversational and easy to follow.
How will you spell his last name?
Yes, it's Gurney, James Gurney, G-U-R-N-E-Y.
And
He
he
also
has
has a YouTube channel and a blog, The Gurney Journey.
the
Yeah.
Gurney Journey you get every day, at least once a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's
What was
really
that?
good about posting little videos of how-tos, and he does a lot of the conventions. He doesn't do workshops himself, but if he'll sign your book with a little dinosaur because he's known for a book called Dinotopia. So great book, Color and Light.
He seems like a nice man.
Really
No,
nice.
he's so giving. That's what is wonderful about him.
Really nice.
Another simple book, this is Kevin McPherson. He's just the master of plein air, goes way back, really good intuitive process. Fill your oil paintings with light and color, Kevin McPherson. And this is a good introductory book. If you're just getting started, he really gives you the materials and how to mix color, really clean and simple. And then he's known for teaching shapes. So seeing those differences of light and shade and shape and building the form that way. So he builds a number of paintings through the book. So I think you'll like that one too. Now we're going to go up the scale, a little more detail. This is the classic Richard Schmid Alla Prima. If you don't own this, you'll want to own it. It's mostly a reading book, but he's got so much content about his experience. He does more atmospheric, kind of softer, loose edges. on his
Speaking of
work.
which,
Yeah, this is his kind of day. But
Yeah.
I'm going to see if I can find there's a painting of his that I just really love in here.
you guys might need to come closer eventually.
Yeah, and I could pass these around.
Be able to see us with the blog.
We'll be in the fog.
I can't find it, but beautiful work and very opinionated. So he'll have an opinion. You can take it or leave it, but it's usually worth taking.
Great.
Then the last one, if you're really into painting now, it's Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting. I read this when I first started painting and it was just too much. So I would say paint 100 paintings, then come back and read this, and it makes sense. And my copy is so precious because I've illustrated my own illustrations all the way through. He really understands how light works and color works. There's no color pictures, but
It's one of those books you might want to take 2 pages a day because
Right.
you're going to have to reread things. And I have not
And
made
you
it
will
through.
beat it up. And what I
Yeah.
love about it too is reading one thing 1 year and 5 years later you'll open it up and you'll read it again and you'll have a whole new understanding.
New interpretation.
Right.
Yeah.
It depends. You'll read it differently depending on the place you are.
Yeah.
it's especially good on the planes of light. So when a ground plane is lighter because it catches more light, an upright plane like a tree is darker because it's not catching light. So he's the classic on that. This little graphic shows one thing is why does the distance get less colorful? Because there's these layers of veils of atmosphere, and as it goes back, it changes the color, and so eventually everything becomes what looks like bluer and grayer. So just simple little graphics like that I've enjoyed.
You
So-
said it's good on a plane. It is good on
Yeah.
a plane. That's a great thing to do on a plane.
Yeah, right.
Nothing else to do.
Or if you
Read
can't get
styles
outside and paint. So
styles.
I would suggest those 4 books. There's plenty of others, but they're great. The next important thing I want to talk about with color, and we all know this, but it's good just to refresh ourselves as we're going through it. Munsell is the man who really developed this. And what it is how do you spot what color is the color? There's 3 things, and we're going to use that today: hue, value, and chroma. So hue is simply the 6 colors that are in a rainbow. It's the color wheel, and you can always find what color it is based upon that hue. So in advertising, whenever we're doing a new project for a company like a logo, they're saying, we want a color that's really different from everyone else. And I always show them this. I go, you have 6 colors. Do you want to be blue like everyone else? Or do you dare to be red? You know, so it's this kind of thing. So color, value is simply darkness or lightness. Simplest way to look at it. It's a much bigger part of color than we think about, but I'll show you that in a minute. And then chroma is intensity. How rich is that color? Certain colors are much more saturated than others, and so that's important.
Is there a difference between intensity and saturation?
Nope, I would say they're the same.
Okay.
So chroma, intensity, saturation, all the same. So when we paint, we're going to ask 3 questions, and that's what I mean about making this simple. When you look at a color, you choose which color of those 6. It's more of a red, but it might be more of a gray red. So you can start with the word gray. So, and then ask, is it warmer or cooler? So if I'm looking at that green, it's a green, but would I call that a warm green or a cool green? Based upon what I mix and what I put up on my palette, on my canvas. And then with value, I put it up and I say, is it darker or lighter? So that's going to be part of our 3rd step. And then, is it more intense or duller? Is my color too bright or is it too dull? So just those 3 questions really help. One of my art teachers said, there's always this thing with 3s. If you can get 3 points in a drawing that are accurate, that will help you draw better because you'll have the width and maybe part of another angle. So think of 3s with everything. It really works well. So I know you can't see it very well, but here's this idea of the Munsell scale. And what he noticed is that things get darker, they also get brighter. So they get that more of that saturation. So here's your 3 things. Hue is your color wheel. You know, the Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. So those are your 6 colors. So you find your hue you're in, and then your value is what's next. Is this darker or lighter? And then how intense is that color? And you can see that certain colors don't go out as far. Notice where the intense colors are. They're always in the middle. So when you see a bright orange that looks like a really light color, but it's actually pretty much in the middle. It's what we call a halftone or a red. In other words, they're pretty dark. So using a scale like that is very helpful. One thing I've been doing is making color charts that help me understand that. Richard Schmid is just great at doing color charts.
They take a really long time, but they're really valuable.
And this is really a helpful one for landscape that I did. And it's mixing, it's sort of, you know, everything in nature is a little more grayed out than we might think. So you're mixing this yellow up to this blue. So different yellows, sort of a peachy orange. And you can see a wonderful middle color is dark blue and orange together because they're complements across that color wheel. So doing color charts like that can be helpful. I had another one that I did a whole series of.
I'll send out not just a YouTube link, but also the photos we take.
Yeah, and I'm going to send you guys a PDF with stuff in it too. That'll help.
Great.
So one thing I did, I paint a lot in gouache. If you guys know what gouache is, it's a watercolor that's opaque. And I recommend this little set from Holbein. It's just the primary colors. It's a great way to learn to mix that color wheel. So you get a black, a white, a red, a yellow, and a blue. So they have that in a number of different versions. Not too expensive, but it's a great way to mix.
Could you show that up here again?
Yeah. So that's the Holbein. Holbein is a great brand, by the way, for gouache.
Okay, great.
You'll find the red a little weird because in printing, they use magenta instead of red. But you mix that with yellow, and you can, that's a red I mixed with this 4-color palette. So here's your yellow, magenta, or in what's called a cyan. But you mix that with a little violet, you get a great blue.
Perfect. Thank you.
So then that's the outer ring. That's the pure tube colors. Then I add white here to get your lighter tints.
And
add
white you use is titanium?
Yeah, titanium white.
And
nice
what do you
opaque.
use in gouache?
Same, titanium. And then I'm adding black here. And then I'm adding black and white to gray it out. So really you can get any single color with a limited palette. Of course, I don't use a limited palette because we have all these other fun colors, but it's a good way to learn how to mix color. And then what I like to do is kind of see where my colors are. So these are earth colors, and I'll take, those are more like natural colors of the earth, and ochres and things like that. Then I'll mix them with white, then I'll mix them with each other to see what I'm gonna get. This isn't something you need to do when you're painting, but it's nice to know what are my colors going to do. And you can see what white does. It really cools off every color. So you gotta be aware of, if you add white, it's gonna cool it off. And then this was something I did, because there's always a deep blue shadow in the distance. It's probably gonna be like those hills in the back. And so I've mixed it a number of different ways. Here's blue and black with white. Here's blue and red with a little brown or burnt umber. You would never think burnt umber would still stay like a nice cool violet, but that's a great color for distant hills. Here's with that magenta, and it doesn't shift that much, and what I'm showing is you can mix a color with a whole bunch of different ways to get at it. So that's what I like about color mixing. You just get in there, keep doing it, and see what happens. And then I tried some darker ones too with more intense hues.
Making the chart probably helps.
Yeah.
I don't always remember.
That's right.
Yeah.
And once they're in your head, so now I know which green to look for, because I was trying to mix some natural greens and a lot of them get just too crazy. I end up liking about 2 of them, you know, and so now I like mixing certain colors with my paint. So Viridian is too much, but a middle green with a nice warmer yellow makes a beautiful you know, darker green. And then I can add some red to neutralize the green. Because again, we're thinking of that color wheel. What's across the color wheel? Complement of green is red. So those kind of dull out the color. And then you see a color like that, something you see in nature a lot. It's kind of a grayed out green. We'll probably see one today. And so a lot of what I do is color studies. This is gouache. This was one of the OPM paint outs at it's by the river. It's a wildlife sanctuary by the airport.
Yeah, that's the Minnesota Valley National
Yeah,
Wildlife.
so you're looking across the river valley. But a real quick, like half-hour sketch. This is what I did 2 nights ago here in the harbor. And I'm gonna go back and now do a full painting. But it's just, you know, that sunset lasts so quickly. Or out in, this was at the plein air convention. Of course, I had to paint the Golden Gate Bridge. But you can see what I wanted you to see was the saturation in the foreground and the darkness. But then in the light, That looks almost like a color of a hill, but it's just basically a gray by the time you get back there. And then I can also do more naturalistic color with gouache. That's a painting I did on the way back from plein air in Lisa's city of Duluth. So going up on top of it, I think is it Wenger, or where's the big towel? Anger, thank you, not Wenger.
Anger.
That's gouache. But what's neat is gouache dries instantly, so I can put this bright color on top of it. So rather than waiting, I can do a really quick painting.
You still do dark to light on gouache?
Yeah,
though.
dark to light works really well. And then when I sneak into the museums, I bring in my little gouache set. You're not supposed to, but I went in, that's the Monet at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and I can do a little copy color study there. So that's how I learn color, is doing these little color studies.
What do you have that on? What are you painting
Oh,
on?
illustration board.
Okay.
So the brand I like is called Crescent, and you get the cold press, which means it's a little rougher. Hot press is smooth, but these are nice for little studies. But
Is it like 500 pounds?
I don't even know. It's more of a ply. I think it's like a 300 weight, maybe. It's not too heavy. You know, you can do it on watercolor paper just fine too, but you get that texture in there. So I like illustration board, which is Crescent is the brand. All right, let me just keep rolling here. So that's those key three things of hue, value, and chroma. And what I wanted you to see with that color wheel was the prism. So my training, Allison's training, most people who live in Minneapolis end up taking from Joe Paquette. And he's really passed down the lineage of the prismatic palette, which means it follows the color of the rainbow, because that's really what happens in nature. We're not going to get into that deep today, but just know this, that when something's up close, you see more yellow, like these front greens. As they back off, they get duller and they lose that yellow. And the further you go back, there's less and less yellow until a green tree really just becomes a blue-gray. And then it goes off into nothingness. So watching that prism and how it works is so important. So that's the key thing about the hue, is that the color changes. So my palette is set up that way with the prism one direction to the other. And it really helps to have that on one side and it goes to the other.
Mm-hmm. I see where you put your green
Yeah.
all the way on the end.
Yeah.
What are there practical reasons for that, or is it sort of arbitrary?
Because green is not really it's such a unique color, and I just keep it, and it gets everywhere. So I keep my green separate. So I mix it a little bit. I add a few other colors too to neutralize things, but we'll look at those in a minute. So that's the key of that hue. Where do I start? Where do I start dipping in? But then the other key was that value. Is it a darker color or a lighter color? And here's the key with mixing color. First of all, pick the shade that you think is closest. It's a blue. Start with the most impressive. Does that tree really look green? You'd say yes, but in my mind, it's more violet-y. So I would start with a violet, then add some green to it. So I start with what I mostly see. That rock is gray, but there's plenty of red in it too. So I'm not going to use a bright red. I might start with a gray and then punch up the color into it. So start with what you see mostly, and then add the color to it. And then along with picking your color, value is the other key thing. In fact, if you get the value right, it really doesn't even matter what the color is. It's kind of weird, but you can do a value-based painting. It's like an old black and white photo. It still reads and it looks natural to our eye, but it's because the darks and light are in the right spot. So here's what this all comes down to. You won't be able to see this, so I'm not even going to show it. You guys can't see that, right? Okay. What I've done is I've taken one of my teacher's paintings, Joe Paquette's paintings, and I've, in Photoshop, sampled the colors, and you'd be surprised. What looks really colorful is very grayed out when you isolate it. And then as it goes back, they get a less and less color. I wish we could see that. We can't. You also, yeah, I don't know if that'll help at all. It's so bright out here.
So is that similar to that visual illusion where they put all these colors together and they put a color next to different colors and they look the same? But
Yeah.
when you isolate them?
Yep. And here's exactly what you're talking about. You can't see this very well, I'm sorry. I'll try to demonstrate it. This is called a string of greens. And so in the foreground, my green is very intense. It's just yellow and blue. But then what I do to make a green go back in the distance, I go through the prism. So I add yellow, I add a little bit of orange, a little bit of red, a little bit of alizarin or, like a violet, and then a blue.
This will be on the PDF.
Yeah, I'll make this all in the PDF. I have really nice pictures of it.
Great, thank you.
But what that does is, that's how you make a tree in the background look natural. You don't put a lot of color in there. You have to mix white with the orange, but that's how you receive the color. So that's really hard to show here, I know, but we'll try to demonstrate
I'm
that.
excited to get the PDF.
Yeah, I think that will help the most. In fact, this is so much, to take in. It'll be better just to go back. The other thing I would say that's key in painting color is separate your lights and your darks. You always will see, no matter, even if it's an overcast day, a collection of darks that stay together and a collection of lights. Most of us, when we start to paint, we put lights and darks anywhere, any place. But if you group them, that's really what will help the painting hold together. Let me show you a few more paintings. I think that will help kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about.
Well, I know all the stuff he's saying, but to put it together, it's kind of
So this is some of my COVID work. So this is a park by our house in St. Paul called Vento, and Joe Paquette takes us there, and we just paint color notes. But this is what I mean about grouping your colors. So the shadow is all connected, and then it's more of a rim light where you see the color. That's what makes something look like sun. So we're going to see that separation. There's a dark value with not a lot of chroma, and then a lighter value with more intensity. So I go back to the same place, and I just keep, trying that idea over and over again. And then, let's see. This is down by Lake Calhoun. So what you can see here with that backlit tree, you see how it kind of grayed out and purpley it is? That's a great color for the shadow of the tree, and that's how I'm going to paint those trees today. There's not a ton of color in it, but because you have the edge of it where it catches the light and color, it really picks it up. And then one more, this is Lake of the Isles. This is where everybody goes kayaking between the channel.